You're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with creator and host, Nomad. With 20 plus years of experience in the music industry, Nomad has done just about everything to earn a living as a career musician. From being music director to celebrity artists, playing iconic arenas and stadiums, composing for film and TV, and even playing your average local club gigs, he's done it all. Nomad's mission is to empower musicians across the globe with strategies for a sustainable career while blasting stereotypes, and to bring you tried and true wisdom from his colleagues in this crazy business we call music.
Welcome to the Career Musician Podcast. Today we are talking with Erskine Hawkins. This dude went from playing with Eminem to Adam Blackstone to Babyface and literally everything in between. Now, he and I met on the Babyface gig when I hired him to be the keyboard player in the band. That's right, I was the music director for Babyface for 10 years, and I stumbled upon Erskine when I put out an ad online, and he responded to it. And let me tell you, when I saw this dude's resume and how professional he was just in responding to my inquiry, I was like, that's it, you're in. His credits and skill levels as a musician are unparalleled by none other than his charismatic personality. Check him out right here on the Career Musician Podcast. In fact, while we were on tour in Japan with Babyface. I'm sitting here with my next guest on the Career Musician Podcast, Erskine Hawkins.
Hello.
Thank you, Erskine, for being here. Erskine
Yeah.
Hawkins, that name to me sounds like a scientist
Really?
or a philosopher. It sounds like such an astute name.
Well, I appreciate it, man. It's been passed down. So it was actually like this famous jazz trumpet player from back in the like the 40s or 50s or something like that. But so my grandfather was named after him, and then passed that down to my dad. They passed it down to me. Wow. And I passed it on to my son, so he's the fourth.
He's the fourth. Okay,
yeah,
we
were just named after the famous trumpet player. So
how cool is that?
Yeah, man.
That's awesome. Well, it's funny because Erskine and I found each other online. I was looking for a keyboard player to fill in for the Babyface band, and I, in particular, needed an auxiliary keys player, or we call it a keys two. Those terms are usually synonymous, right?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, Erskine is the type of guy who goes out there and scours opportunities, and he found my bulletin job posting, right?
Yeah.
And then,
man, what's interesting? I actually tell this story quite often. This is probably one of my favorite stories to tell of how I wound up on this Babyface gig, because at first I think I was auditioning for Chair 1. If I'm not mistaken,
I think you're right.
I was auditioning for Chair 1. But it's cool.
Yeah,
but this is so the cool part about it is I didn't get the gig at first, and of course I wouldn't, because I was up against Clifton Williams. For anybody knows who Clifton Williams is, he's a monster in every aspect of the keyboard. So I went out to LA, I auditioned for him. And then I think, a week or so later or whatever, like, we're so sorry, we went with another guy. And I was pretty down about it. I was, because I have never gone for a gig. I've never auditioned for a gig that I didn't get. Never.
You're absolutely right. I remember this, but let me correct you. I think you were living in LA at the time.
You're right. So I didn't go to LA.
Yes, I was living in LA. And now
No, that's not what it was. I was living in Dallas. And I was getting ready to move to LA. That's what it was. So.
And I remember you came to Babyface's studio to audition. I remember that. But I really liked what you did.
So this is the part of the story that I love to tell. Like, I was really down about it. And me, I'm a Christian, so everything that I do revolves around my faith in God. So right. I moved to Los Angeles, and I didn't have any gigs lined up. And I was so after I got the email saying I didn't get the gig, I moved to LA anyways. And I was there, I didn't have anything lined up, and I was there sitting with a friend, and she was talking about her time in LA and how stuff doesn't work out for her and whatever else. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes you just gotta trust. You gotta trust God that He's gonna whatever is supposed to be. And we were literally having that conversation that whatever is supposed to be yours is gonna be yours, and just not worry about it. I think we were watching something on Netflix or whatever, and man, I laid back down on the couch. I was stretched out on the couch. And I opened my email, and there was a message from Nomad saying, hey, this was 2 months after that.
Okay.
It was hey, the boss brought you up today at the gig, and he wants you to come back in and re-audition. And it was like out of the blue, out of nowhere. You hit me up. It was as I was having that conversation of whatever's supposed to be yours is going to be yours. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to not make it be yours if it's supposed to be yours. And then I got that email. I mean, it was literally in the same breath that I finished saying that I got that email from you. Went back in, re-auditioned for you guys, and now we're pushing towards year 4.
I was just gonna say it's been a while.
That was 2016, so we're pushing towards year 4 coming up in May.
Can I just say the past 4 or 5 years for me have been a blur? Do you feel the same way?
Man, they've gone by kind of quick.
So quick.
They've gone by quick.
What's going on? Okay, well, I love that story, and thank you for reminding me of the exact account. Wow, yes, so that is exactly how it happened. And what I love about you and Clifton is that you guys are literally interchangeable. Either one of you can play chair 1 or 2.
Right.
So that's an amazing thing. We'll talk more about that.
What was the name of that show on Netflix? Comedians in cars drinking coffee or whatever. It's exactly what this is. This is very real.
Musicians eating breakfast.
Exactly.
In Tokyo.
Around the world. Around the world. Yeah.
What's up? I'm a career musician. I love it. But again, one of those things about you is that you're always well prepared, and I think you can never be too prepared.
Right.
You should be over prepared, and you fit that bill.
Man, that has a lot to do with the way that I started playing music, and that's because I was never the best musician, if you will. So I started playing music. I started late on keyboard. Before that, I was a drummer. I mean, I was terrible. That's what everybody said. I was terrible. I thought I was pretty good. I was terrible, and I started in church, but I was never able to play. We had a main drummer already, and he was, I was probably like 10 or 11 trying to play the drums, and this guy was a grown-up, so, luckily for me, though, like, he didn't always show up. Like, sometimes, like, he was supposed to be there at rehearsals, just wouldn't show up, no call, no shows. So that's how I got my time in on the drum kit. I had a drum kit at home, but that's how I got my time in, was like just anticipating when he wasn't going to be there. So I was always there. And I was there before him, and most times I wound up getting to play. So that was pretty neat.
I'm sorry, reiterate that, man. That's the key phrase. You were always there.
I was always there.
Always ready.
Yeah, I was always there and always ready. So when he didn't show up, I was able to just jump right on in.
So
I'll talk about that in a second too. Yeah, that was one of my first big opportunities, was exactly that. So all right, so
for any musician, always being the person there and always being ready and over prepared. Go ahead, please.
I forgot all about that. So you said something, but I've got a story to go along with that. So anyways, man, the minister of music at our church, because I grew up, my dad was in the military, so I'm a military brat. So people were always leaving the military base. We went to church on the military base, and they were always leaving. So the minister of music got orders. He was leaving. There wasn't going to be a keyboard player, and his son was the bass player. And I mean, his daughter was like the worship leader. The whole family was leaving, and the church. So I was like, man. And we knew about it like 3 or 4 months in advance. So I was like, well, let me try to learn like a song on the piano so we could at least play, one song, with the piano. So I asked him if he could show me a song, and he showed me a song. My dad also plays piano too. Okay. So my dad was working with me as well at the same time. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, so I learned my one little song, man. I was like 2 notes in my right hand and 1 note in my left hand, but I got through it, man. It was super simple, like 3 chords.
You remember what it was?
It was called Ancient of Days.
Okay.
It was almost the same as playing chopsticks, if you will, man. But
I love that.
That was like the first song that I learned how to play. And I mean, after the minister of music left, my brother actually picked up bass. So he learned how to play the bass. I taught myself how to play the piano. I was terrible, man. There were some times where the choir directors was, just stop. Just don't play. It would be actually better if you guys didn't
just
play.
Just a cappella.
That's where it was, man. I was like 13, so
that's hilarious.
That's how I was when I started playing. But man, from there, like I just practiced every day. And in high school, I was actually, the high school I went to at first had a medical program. I wanted to be a pediatrician, man. That's what I wanted to do. I had high hopes.
How did you decide that at such a young age? How does one discover?
I'm not really sure, but I knew that high school had a medical program. I had never heard of a high school having a medical program, but you could like graduate from that high school with your associate's degree, with like emphasis in like medical something. It was really interesting. Impressive. So I went to that high school with that in mind. But that's around the same time the Minister of Music left, and I started kind of playing piano. We also had an arts high school in Wichita Falls, Texas. That's where I grew up. And so, man, I was like, I don't know, do I still want to do this medical thing? Because I'm really interested in like playing piano. I really want to be able to, like, I was practicing every day. You know, when you first start practicing, it's like 7 hours a day, 8 hours. The bug, it bit me well, man. So I left. I mean, I asked my mom if I could transfer high schools. We talked to the arts high school, and they accepted me, you know, so I transferred there. And I wasn't necessarily we didn't have music majors. It wasn't that kind of a thing, but there was a piano class, so I was in the piano class. And then we also talked to the guy over the jazz band, and I was in jazz band. I mean, I don't know how I was terrible, but the jazz band was okay. So, but they weren't all that great anyway. So I fit the jazz band. But then for my first period class, he was saying, because there was something about, you know, if you wanted to be a marching band or something. I'm like, I don't want to be a marching band. I don't want to do that. He's like, well, since you have such an interest in piano, I don't want to deter you from playing it. Why don't I accept you into marching band? But we have practice rooms. So it was a practice room with the piano. So your first period class, and it's every day for 90 minutes, is to sit in that practice room and just practice. Wow. I think that was probably the best thing that ever happened.
What grade was that?
This was ninth grade. I did that for 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade.
3
years. This is in addition to a piano class. So I was in piano class. I was in jazz. So piano class was 90 minutes. Jazz band was 90 minutes. And now I had just 90 minutes every morning of whatever I wanted to practice.
So it was like a magnet music program.
Kind of, yeah.
I went to the same type of high school.
Exactly, yeah. It was basically, I had math and science and all that.
Yeah.
That was my day for years. That was kind of what I did. So, man, I think that's kind of where it accelerated, man. That's kind of where my music accelerated, was from there. So that's how I got started. And one of the things that kind of pushed me to really be better, I don't know if you're familiar with All Region Jazz Band, All Region. This is like band competition. It's not even competitions.
Are they national though? Or regional?
They're regional. They're regional, and you can like try out for. I don't exactly understand what it was. It's them All Region Jazz Band. Yeah. So, anyways, man, I was like, yo, let me try out for this. I was the jazz piano player at the school. So basically, I go to a competition. I read some music and I show them my chops or whatever, and they place you. Either you make the jazz band or you don't make the jazz band, and that's it. It's called All Region Jazz Band. Sure. So it was like a 3-hour bus ride. We got there, man. I auditioned and I got 5th place.
Okay.
Which I thought was something. This was I think this was my junior year.
That's good.
That's what I thought, right? Until I saw that there were only 5 people that tried out for it.
I thought there was going to be like 50.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. I got 50 out of 5. Hey. I mean, there were freshmen that that was a turning point in my life, man. It was like, geez, I got to get better, man.
But see, what I like about you is your optimism. It's just what we talked about you getting the gig with Face. You were telling your friend, you know what? No, let's not be down. You just never know. Let's, all in God's time. Let's just see what's going to happen. So even at a young age, you had that.
It's okay. It's okay. That's really. It's okay. It's 5th place, and I was like, man, I actually vowed to myself that'll never happen again. But what happened that weekend while I was there at the All Region Jazz Band, the guy was telling me about the University of North Texas, and he was telling me how great of a music program, because I was telling him I wanted to go to Berklee College of Music in Boston.
And you were a junior at the time.
I was a junior, yeah. So I still had plenty of time. But he was like, yeah, you should really look into going to North Texas. It's around the corner. It's a great jazz program. It's a good music program. You should take a look at it. But he said, but I got to tell you, you got to get your classical chops up, because it's a hard school. They really take that classical music seriously. And I was telling him I'd never played classical music before, so I wasn't exactly sure.
So you're what, 15, 16?
I was 16.
Yeah, okay.
I was about 16 at that time. Yeah, man. So I don't know. So that was it was a seed. I'll say that. He kind of planted a seed in my mind. I knew about North Texas. Before that, I had never heard of it.
Yeah.
that's kind of where that started. So after high school, I mean, I had a scholarship to Berkeley, and I was gonna go to Berkeley, but my mom was just like, I mean, I don't want you that far away from home. You know, can I drive you up to North Texas and we just take a look around the campus? I mean, let's fast forward 2 years from that story, or about a year and a half or whatever.
Okay.
So I've just graduated high school, and I'm getting ready for college.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were getting ready to send me up to Boston, and this is July. You know, school starts in August. And she was like, you know, please, can we just go take a look at North Texas? So I went up there, man, and I'm getting, at this point, I'm still practicing every day in high school. And we get there and we go to the College of Music. Auditions are already done to accept people. But we find the jazz piano professor. We find his office and we knock on the door. He's there. It's during the summer, but he's there. And my mom was like, can my son audition for you? I know auditions are over, but can he just play for you?
Only through the what do you call? Oh, now I'm at a loss for words. Only a parent, though.
Yeah.
Only a loving parent.
Like, hey, mom, auditions are over. It's cool. I'll catch it next semester. It's fine.
That's amazing.
But,
you're like all embarrassed.
Right. No. So I sit down, man, and I play. I forgot what I played. I didn't really know anything about jazz at this point. I played jazzy because I was playing in church. So it was kind of jazzy, but I couldn't tell you, like, take the A train. I didn't know anything about form, nothing about any of that.
So you weren't playing a standard.
I wasn't playing a standard. I was just playing at this point. I'm not even sure what I was playing. It was probably something gospel-esque or whatever. But he was like, he said, you sound really good. I think you would do well here. So he wrote a note for us to take to the admissions office, and he said he was admitting me into the College of Music. And he said, you still have to get into the college, but that was no problem. And good grades and all that.
Okay, yeah.
So,
transcripts were good.
Yeah, transcripts were good. I mean, man, that was probably, let's say that was Thursday. Come Monday, I was going to orientation. It was that great.
Again, only through the word is tenacity.
Tenacity.
The tenacity of a proud parent.
Come Monday, I was going to orientation. A week later, I was moving into a dorm. And that's how it started.
Wow. And how far was North Texas from where you lived?
So between high school, like I actually transferred high schools my senior year. We moved from Wichita Falls, which is about 2.5 hours outside of Dallas. We moved to Dallas. So now it's about 40 minutes from my parents' house.
That's it?
That was it.
Of course your parents wanted you to go there, your mom.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. As opposed to going all the way up to Boston.
Yeah.
So I wanted, but it's far enough to where they weren't going to get in the car and come down.
So you still had some autonomy.
It was great.
Yeah.
So that's how I started in music. I think that's my college. So I went to college for piano. Like the guy said though, it was classical music was important, man, that versatility, and I didn't take it. So I wound up in remedial classical piano, if you'd call it, but they actually call it secondary piano, but I call it remedial.
I would start there,
Right.
or even below that.
But, so the point of this is so you can get your classical chops up, so you'd be ready for it. I had to be a classical concentration major for 2 years. That's the way North Texas was. It's not like that anymore. But
I love this story though.
Yeah,
this is a good story.
I was just telling you this the other day. Yeah, man. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay.
No
That's
problem.
perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, this is perfect. Thank you.
May I have more coffee? Anything, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So let me say this. Classical piano for me was always a trip because I took it in college in my first year. But as a guitarist, I'm used to playing everything together.
You guys have classical piano for guitars?
Right. Well, I mean, as a music major, it's just the primary.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha, yeah.
So as a guitarist, I'm fretting. Thank you so much, dude. I'm fretting notes with my fretting hand, and I'm plucking those same notes with my right hand, right? So we're basically doing the same thing at the same time. So I'm thinking, piano, it's totally the opposite.
It really is.
Both hands are 100% independent oftentimes. And that is a mind that really screws with your mind. So I can relate to that. So please, I love this part of the story.
Man, and then, but to not have grown up in that, like I've never taken classical piano. Now, I had piano class in high school. I did do that, but when I tell you, my teacher's name was Miss Watson. When I tell you, man, I kicked and I pushed and I fought her tooth and nail. And she said,
at North Texas.
No. This was in high school.
In high school.
So I practiced what I wanted to practice. Yeah. And she was like, Erskine, one day you're gonna need, you're gonna need this stuff that I'm trying to teach you. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna play gospel music, and I don't need to know. That's what I thought. That's what and I told her that. later on, like years later, I went back to that high school and I gave her the biggest hug and I apologized. She was just trying she was trying to make my life easier, but I fought her. So anyways, I wound up in secondary classical piano in college. I only did that for one semester because I was a quick study and I really like practicing, like I know how to practice, so.
Yeah, but you have to elaborate there because when Erskine says he's a quick study, he really is. And I can attest to that. Yesterday, just 2 days ago, we had a rehearsal with Babyface where we had to recreate a whole entire classical intro
on the spot.
On the spot.
Yeah.
Where basically the boss, Babyface, says, "Yeah, why don't you guys play that live?" And we all looked at each other like, that piece was written, arranged, recorded by a 60-some-odd piece orchestra. So, of course, we're not in the business of making excuses. We're in the business of getting things done.
Make it happen.
So, yeah, Erskine jumped on the harp, and I think you took the cellos and violas, and Clifton took the violins, the first and second violins.
And he played a different harp line. Then I also took the timpanis as well.
That's right.
It actually turned out very, very well.
So when you say you're a quick study, number one, he's not lying. Number two, all of this preparation that you had in these formative years really does pay off, and I want to show that to aspiring professional musicians out there. Even though you think something might not be necessary,
it's not a waste of time.
Just do it anyway.
Yeah, it's not a waste of time.
Just get it done, right? It's going to help you in the future, guaranteed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, man, I wound up in secondary piano for one semester, and I got out of it. I had to play some Bach and some two-part invention stuff.
That's
it was
easy stuff. But it's beautiful.
It was beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
And it got my mind accustomed to this is now college.
Right.
So I wound up being a classical piano major, and the way North Texas was then, you had to do 2 years of classical piano before you could start your jazz piano, which is what I was there for. I was there to study jazz piano. And man, when I tell you, I wound up doing like 3.5 years of classical piano because I could not pass the proficiencies at the end of the semester. And there was one towards the very end, so they would give me about 5 classical pieces every semester that I would have to play. And at the end of the semester in like December, right before Christmas, you can't even enjoy Christmas because you're practicing. So right before Christmas, I mean, you got these proficiencies and you walk in, you're sweating, you're clammy. Because you know, like your whole semester of working, like it comes down to these 4 judges that are sitting in there and they listen to you play. And either you pass or you don't. There's no grade. Like it's a pass-fail.
5 pieces.
5 pieces.
You have to perform all 5 pieces before
all 5
the
pieces
committee.
And scales, major scales and all keys 4 octaves, minor scales,
yeah.
all keys 4 octaves, arpeggios, all keys, major, minor, 4 octaves,
and cadences.
Cadences and all the cadences, diminished scales and all keys, and your 7th chord, like 1, 3, 5, flat 7.
Dominant.
Your dominant scales and all 12 keys. You didn't know which one they were going to call, and it's at tempo, so they would count it off. 1, 2, B flat. 1,
16th
2,
notes, 8th
3,
notes.
4.
It's 16th notes. Straight 16s.
That was
4 octaves.
You have no 4 octaves up and down, all those scales, all those arpeggios. You had no idea which one they were going to call until you sat down, and they would say G 1, 2, and this is your final exam.
Can I tell you something? I'm chomping at the bit to say this.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm such a college professor. I really am. I missed my calling. It's never too late, but I didn't get a degree. This is how I trained my daughter to play piano.
Are you serious?
At 10. She knows all.
She's gonna have a
She
complex.
knows all major and minor scales in all 12 keys with arpeggios and cadences.
Are you
double-handed.
serious? Really?
Yes.
You're a drill master. What is wrong with you?
I love it. I get excited
You're the
by that
career
kind
musician.
of stuff.
She doesn't stand a chance.
She's 12. She can sit down and not only recite the circle of fifths, but play through it in 2 octaves.
That's
but if you could do
crazy.
2 octaves, you could do 4.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, same thing.
And she could do it up to speed.
That is insane. That's
So I
college
love that.
level. So
Is it?
Yeah, that's college level stuff. Man,
Because my belief is like this: if you're going to play a song, I want you to understand what key the song is in, but why it's in that. Like,
Yeah.
in other words, this song is in B flat. But what does that mean, Dad?
Right, exactly.
Excuse me. Well, B flat is very different from F sharp.
Yep. How's it composed? Yeah.
So anyway, those type of things. So wow, this is great,
Man. So let me hurry up and get out of get out of college.
Well, I love this story. So tell us the crux of this story, because you helped change the face of how North Texas State operates
For
in this
jazz
capacity.
majors. Yeah, man.
We're talking about North Texas State, one of the
They
most
call it the
prestigious.
University of North Texas.
The
now.
University of North,
Yeah.
one of the most prestigious music schools in the world.
Yeah.
So tell us that.
So, one of the semesters I wound up failing. Because when you go into these, they're called juries. When you go in, there's 4 professors sitting there, and your private instruction teacher, they can come in there with you.
Yeah.
So she sits there and she takes her notes so we can talk about it afterwards. And man, I just knew I got in there. I killed it. I did great. And then, so they sent me out in the hallway while they talked with her. She comes out and she tells me, "You failed." And I was like, whoa, why? This was it was supposed to be my last one before I started my jazz studies. And I was like, why?
So you were so excited.
I was excited. And she said, "You failed because you didn't pay attention." This is what the jury said. You didn't pay attention. You were playing a Bach fugue. And at the time, Bach was written on harpsichord. Piano wasn't around when Bach was writing.
Yeah.
So because of and you used a pedal. You were using a pedal to sustain your notes. You didn't pay attention to the detail of the music.
the markings.
You didn't. Well, not even the
Not
markings.
even-
Just the stylistic character of the music. If you're playing Bach, you don't use pedal, but you use the pedal, which means you didn't really study this semester. Pay more attention to detail and try again.
Oh my goodness.
So I was just like, what in the world?
They couldn't just give you that note
That's
and
what I
move
said.
you on?
That's what. No. I failed my last one. So I had to. So the way it worked at the time, I don't know how it works now. If you fail a semester, which is why it took me 3.5 years to get out. If you fail a semester of classical piano, you go back to secondary for a semester. Then you have to redo the semester that you failed. It puts you a year behind.
That's kind of absurd.
That's why I was the first African American to ever get out of that program. Most people at that point, I quit.
No, you got out of it successfully.
I was the first
Yeah.
one to get my undergraduate jazz piano degree because I didn't quit.
You
It
finished
put you
it,
a year
right.
behind, yeah. So it did. It put me a year behind. That's why it took me 5.5 years to graduate instead of just 4 years or 4.5 years or whatever. But I got out of there, and after so I stuck with it. I went back. I did my semester of secondary. I actually did it. I asked my professor if I could do it during the summer, so it's not a full semester. Summer classes still count as semester, but it's only 5 weeks.
Right.
So I had to bust my butt. I had to learn 5 more pieces. Well, it was actually secondary is only like 3 pieces.
Okay.
So I had to learn
That
3
helps.
pieces during the
a week
summer.
and a half per piece.
Yeah, something like it's still
Roughly.
hard.
It's still hard.
But I got through it, and then that following fall, then I redid the semester that I had failed, and then I was on to my jazz studies.
Wow.
But man, after I got through that, I had a real conversation with them in North Texas, and I was like, man, could you imagine what it would be like to be a classical piano major who's coming to North Texas to study classical piano, but the rule is before you can study classical piano, you have to do 2 semesters
do
of
2.
jazz piano. They wouldn't be able
They wouldn't
to
do
do
it.
it. They wouldn't be able to do it. It's impossible, but that was the requirement for
You
us.
can't encapsulate Bud Powell, Oscar Peterson, and these type of musical giants
Yeah.
within 2 semesters if you've never played the
If you've
genre
never-
before.
Which is exactly what it was trying to be, and I get
It's
it.
the same for classic. How can you really fully ingest
The scales, arpeggios, I get that.
That's important.
I need
That's
that.
your foundation. You have to have
Right.
that.
But everything
But
else,
Chopin on
and you
the
failed because
etudes?
you used the sustain pedal, like it was that kind of a thing. So now, I wasn't the only person complaining. I'm the first African American to get through it. But now at North Texas, the last time I checked, you now do your jazz studies and your classical studies concurrently.
Yeah, but you're responsible for that. Say it like you told me the other day.
It started the semester after I left.
This is how Erskine, because he's humble, he's not going to say it on recording, but I'll say it for him.
Yeah.
Because you're humble, you said, I was the first African American to complete the classical piano program before I went on to the jazz program.
Correct.
And I am single-handedly responsible for changing the way they have their policies now.
Nomad embellishes, but I was the first African American to get my undergraduate jazz piano degree from North Texas,
Right.
completing everything that they required of me at the time. So
Which
that
is impressive, first
that
of all.
was, man.
because
So that's what it was. Yeah.
you succeeded in making a point to the staff.
That's why I couldn't quit.
Yeah, it's like saying, look, it's not that we can't do it, it's that's what you told me the other day. You said, I wasn't raised on classical music.
And
so
most
this was
African
all me."
Americans aren't. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not. So
But, quite on the other side of this spectrum, most African Americans are raised with a really strong gospel foundation.
Yeah.
So that's super cool that you have. But now, what I said to you is, think of it. You have this amazing gospel foundation. Now you have the intense classical foundation, and you morphed it all into jazz. And then now you play pop and R&B and everything else.
I mean, I don't even use the classical jazz part of it, but it's there.
Yes, you do.
I mean, I do.
You just used it 2 days ago.
You're absolutely. I don't use it on a daily basis, but you're absolutely right. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
If we need to call on it, we can use it. Yeah, man. So that's where I started out. Graduated, and then I was like, "Wow, let me do my master's. I'm on a roll." And I did like a year in my master's, and I said, "Man, this isn't for me anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm ready to get out into the world. I'm ready to give this a try." So I moved up to New York City, and I was there.
You moved to New York. That's impressive too. That you had that.
And you know what?
Tenacity.
Man, that's what it. So I moved to Dallas my senior year of high school. So I'm not saying like I didn't really know a bunch of people there.
Yeah.
But I'm saying there were a couple of gigs there, and there were all like Kirk Franklin was one of the biggest gigs in Dallas, and Erykah Badu was one of the biggest gigs in Dallas. And now there's some other artists out of Dallas as well. I think Leon Bridges is from Dallas. There's a whole bunch of people from Dallas now, but this was like 2004, 2005. It was Erykah Badu and Kirk Franklin were the two biggest gigs that I knew of that I would want to do. And nobody was getting on those gigs, especially me, because I was like, nobody knew who I was. You know, I was in high school. No, nobody knew who I was yet. And even in college or whatever, I didn't really go out because I was a music major. So I'm like, I'm gonna focus. So
you have to study.
So
you have to
I was
practice.
like, man, if I sit around Dallas and wait for somebody to put me on a gig, more than likely it's never gonna happen.
You'll play at church, and then you won't really get into
the term that I used with my mentor. I was like, Jamar, I don't want to be. Jamar Jones is my mentor. I said, I don't want to be a local yokel. That's what I said.
I love that term.
I don't want to be a local yokel. I want to travel. I want to do this thing. How do I do? It was like, man, you should get out of here then. Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So man, I packed up my stuff. I moved up to Woodbridge, New Jersey. That's as close as I could get that was affordable. And I have family there, so I stayed with some family. And man, I was on that train every day.
I was gonna say, did you commute into the city?
Every single day.
That's the trick.
Man.
If you don't go in and feel what that city is like,
you got to do it every day.
You got to suffer through.
Not when you have a gig. I mean, every day. And if I didn't have a gig, I was at a jam session.
Okay.
But I tried to have a gig every day, no matter whose band it was. I was on Craigslist. You need a keyboard player. Do you need a keyboard player? Whoever it is, it doesn't matter if it pays or not. At this point. Well, that's a money thing, but we'll talk about that.
No, but that's amazing. Yeah. You don't less. Yeah,
it didn't matter how much it paid. My first thing was to get my foot in the door in New York City,
and to get the experience
of New York City. Yeah, you can't be picky and choosy. It's any gig.
That's why you're such a good player to this day, though, because you went through this boot camp. Not only of what do they call it, North Texas University?
University of North Texas.
University of North Texas. It used to be North Texas State.
NTSU,
and so you had that, which is, again, upper echelon training. And then you went to New York, again, upper echelon real world training.
Yeah.
So now you have both.
Yeah.
That's a toolkit that's unparalleled.
You can't pay for that kind of knowledge.
No.
You can't pay for it. You just got to live it. But so we were talking about being in the right place at the right time. In college, man, I went to this rehearsal. There was this artist that was going to be in town, man. He was a big gospel artist at the time. And I guess they were putting a band together from Dallas. And I was just like, man, I want to go to this rehearsal. So I hit up a friend of mine who knew what church they were going to be rehearsing at. And it was like 10 o'clock at night. It was a late night rehearsal and whatever. And I went with my friend, and I was just sitting there, man, and I was listening to them rehearse, and it sounded great. The band was great. And then I guess the artist was like, because he brought his own music director, but there was supposed to be a secondary keyboard player. There was supposed to be somebody else. And the secondary keyboard player didn't show up to that rehearsal. The concert was the next night. And he was like, hey, man, like contractually, there's supposed to be another keyboard player here. Where's the keyboard player? And I guess the promoter, whoever the guy was like, I don't know, he just didn't show up. And they're like, no, man, this ain't gonna fly.
That's not acceptable.
We need another keyboard player. That's not what we talked about yet. And I was sitting and I was just there at the rehearsal because I wanted to be there. And I was like, I could do it.
You look around the room, raise your hand.
Because I was the only friend. I was the only keyboard player. I was like, man, get this guy the music. So, man, I went back to my dorm. I was still in the dorms. Yeah. I went back to my dorm, man. It was probably 1 a.m. by the time I got back to my dorm. Stayed up from 1 a.m. I think that was a Friday night. So I stayed up until like 8 o'clock in the morning learning all 14 songs. It was a bunch of music, and it was hard. It was this dude's concert.
Of course.
So I learned it all, wrote it, whatever charts I needed to write,
Yeah.
man. Got a couple of hours of sleep. I think sound check was at like noon or
Oh
something
boy,
like that.
yeah,
Man.
you're pushing it. Yikes!
I went to sound check, man. Went to the concert that night, played that show. So that was my first.
And you crushed it.
And I crushed it, man. I mean, I was a secondary keyboard player,
See?
guy, so I wasn't carrying anything.
But that's that career musician mentality and the proactive
Yeah,
approach.
yep.
You know what the definition of luck is? Preparedness meets opportunity.
Yeah.
You were prepared. First of all, let's examine this. You had the skill set to not only learn the music by ear because nobody charted it for you, but then you had the skill set to chart it for yourself so you wouldn't forget it during the show. Then you had the business acumen to know that if I just go and be prepared, something good might happen.
You never know. Yeah. Yep.
Right? And then you had the discipline to stay up all night and
go to
really
sleep.
shed the music.
Learn
You also
first,
had the
sleep later.
discipline to show up on time,
Yeah.
to sound check. And
Yeah.
so in other words, you're hitting all the major points of a successful career musician without being told.
Yep.
It's not as easy for some of us, but that's a great story. Who
That
was
was
the
my-
artist?
Tone.
Tone, I remember Tone.
Tone,
Of
yeah.
course,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that it goes by B Slade now.
B Slade,
But
I think you're
it
right.
was
Yeah,
Tone,
yeah, yeah.
Tone at the time.
Yeah.
But man, it was a good concert, man. It was. I mean, he's a monster.
Amazing.
So that was a good concert. So fast forward now, I'm living in New York, and a friend of mine was Chrisette Michelle's music director.
Gotcha.
And I guess remember we talked about a lot of guys. They'll go. They go on the road first, and then they want to go back to college later.
Right.
The keyboard player for Chrisette Michelle, he went from the military. This is where I know that the music director, he was in the military, and I knew him from church. But then when he got out of the military, he started traveling. I don't know how he got in, but he was a touring musician. And I remember when he got the Chrisette Michelle gig, he was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna be, touring with Chrisette Michelle." And at the time, I was like, "Man, I'm quitting college. Here I come. I'm on my way." He's like, "No." He said, "No. He said, finish
Relax.
college." I was like, "Yeah, I'm coming. I'm on my way to New York." He said, "Man, finish college. When you get out of college,
Then.
I got you." And
Okay.
so when I
That's
got
amazing.
and that was like 3 years before I got there. So yeah, I finished college, started my master's. I forgot all about that. So by the time I got there, I was like, "Man, I'm here in the city or whatever. I'm just doing gigs and whatever." He was like, "Man, our keyboard player is actually going back to college. He wants to go to college now, and we don't have a keyboard
We have
player.
a slot.
We have a slot. Would you like to come out and play?" And man, so yeah, that was my first gig. And you know how gigs, I go in and I do what I do. You know how that goes, man. I learn my music, go in and play. She wasn't disappointed. Yada 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 yada.
You keep your mouth shut.
Keep my mouth shut.
Your
I do
eyes
my
and ears
thing.
wide
yeah,
open.
man.
Yeah.
I was on that gig for like 6-7 years, man.
Yeah.
And that was my first gig. From that gig, normally, once you get your foot in the door in one place, it's easy to jump from gig to gig. It's like an endorsement kind of. Oh, this guy knows what he's doing for the most part.
That's right.
So I went from that gig to. I was on Twitter and saw that this girl named Zendaya, I had never heard of her before, was auditioning a band. I mean, like now she's like the biggest thing from Disney and
Right.
she's in the Spider-Man movies and the whole thing. So I sent an email. I was like, "I want to audition. Can I audition?" Man, when I got to that audition, I realized that, by this time I had been playing with Chrisette Michelle for 2 years.
Yeah.
I realized that a lot of the top guys, I had to fly. I had moved back to Dallas by
I was
now.
going to ask you, so you had to fly to LA for the audition?
I've had to fly myself to So
Let's talk about all
I was living in New York, started working with Chrisette Michelle.
Yeah.
Didn't want to live in New York anymore. Realized that no matter what gigs we were doing with Chrisette Michelle, we were always flying anyways.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm moving back to Dallas.
It's not necessary to live in New York. You got the schooling
I got
you needed.
the gig. Yeah, got
You
the
know.
gig. I'm good to go
You got
home
your
now.
butt kicked on the streets of New York a little bit.
Got my foot in the door. I
Yeah,
moved
yeah.
back to Dallas. But I never stopped just like, all right, cool, I got one gig. I'm chilling now. That
Right,
just wasn't
right.
my
Of
mentality.
course, of
I
course.
want to stay as busy as possible because this is my career. Like
That's right.
one source of income isn't good for, that's not good for business. If
That's
she
right.
decides to take, some months off or, some of the artists I work with, they'll do 1 or 2 shows a year. Like, and that's. So anyway, man, so I was on Twitter at the time, and Zendaya was looking for a band, so I sent in my thing, and I got this is where the audition is, yada yada yada. I showed up. I'm like, man, I hope I get it. There's gonna be so many people there, and yada. there weren't that many keyboard players that showed up. And what I realized was, the more auditions I would do, I realized that the top guys don't go to auditions. So I was like, I could actually use this to my advantage if I'm not too proud. If I'm willing to go to auditions, man, you can really clean up, because for the most part, the top guys aren't gonna go. So,
pay attention and find out where you could fit in the cracks. That's the moral of this story. Yes.
So any audition, I'm not too proud to go to an audition, because for the most part, like you're not going to be up against the tough people. You're going to be up against people who love that artist.
The second and third string.
The second and third string, fourth string. Maybe people who like don't really play at all, but they had, I'm gonna go play for so and so.
Who have no chance.
Chance, but they're filling up the space. So you might even show up and see a crazy line. Don't be intimidated by that, because chances are, like, there's not that many professional musicians. Anyway,
that's a great observation and a great theory, mindset, philosophy to have on that. Incredible. Again, so young but so wisdom filled. That's pretty impressive.
Man, it was just some observations I was finding. Man, I showed up to the audition. I auditioned, and her dad was there, man. And he's like, wow, he's like, geez, you can really. By this time, I had a college degree in this. I've been touring in New York. I've been playing in church. I was at the Potter's house with TD Jakes. And,
you got every area covered.
So like this is easy. Like she was 17 at the time. We're playing pop. She might have been 16. We're playing pop music and whatever. Easy stuff. So I made the callback list. The next day, there was probably only now like it's dwindled down from like 50 keyboard players to like maybe 10 keyboard players. So I'm sitting outside of, it's like a Guitar Center in, was it Woodland Hills? A Guitar Center studio or whatever. So I'm sitting outside just waiting for them to open the doors for the audition. Her dad pulls up in his Beamer, rolls down the window. Young man, come jump in the car with me. Come take a ride with me. So and this is like before the callback. So I jump in the car with them, and he was like, all right, I want you to be our keyboard player. I mean, this is before we audition again. He's like, so what's it going to cost me to get you? And that was he said, I'm going to have you audition with everybody else today, but like, just
You're the guy.
What's your price? So by this time.
Excuse me, I have to do this with the pinky on the corner of the mouth. $1 million.
Man, but by this time, so this was 2013 in the summer. Earlier, like maybe 2 weeks before I went to the audition, I still went, but earlier that summer I got a phone call from Adam Blackstone, and he just called me out of the blue. And I met him the year before, and we did some work together, like, so I wrote some charts for him, and I did some arranging for him, but we had never worked together per se. But he called me, he's like, man, how are your hip hop chops? And I was like, I mean, I guess, I could play hip hop. I had never played a hip hop gig before. He was like, okay, well, I got some of my top guys. I think that year Justin Timberlake was out on tour with Jay-Z. So he's like, I got my top guys, like my A-list guys. They're out with Jay-Z and Justin Timberlake this summer, so it's kind of leaving a hole. I got some dates with Eminem coming up. Could you fill in with Eminem? And I was like, I've never played hip hop before, but I can do it.
Of course.
And that was, so I already knew that I was going to be heading out with Eminem shortly, like right after this Zendaya audition. So when her dad said, come jump in the car with me, what's it going to cost? And I was like, man, to be honest with you, I just accepted a gig with Eminem, so I'll be touring with him for a while. So I thought they would just go with another keyboard player and that would be it. So he's like, you know what, actually, that's fine. We can work with this. So I'm going to have another keyboard. I'm going to have a sub for you. We'll have him start this tour off with Zendaya, and when you get back, he can go home and you're the guy. And that was kind of
that's what happened?
Yeah. We'll send him home and you're the guy. So I told him my price, and man, that was,
Well, let's break this down, because for the average person listening, whether you realize it or not, like I said, average, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, perhaps in the less experienced career musician, there's a lot of different things that are happening within this 10-minute scenario here. First of all, for those who aren't experienced and haven't done these gigs, but who are aspiring to, first of all, Erskine has something that we call confidence, right? But confidence is not to be misconstrued with arrogance, because you are not in the least bit way arrogant. You are confident. You are confident, but not arrogant.
Right.
And that is the key. So that means that you know that you know your stuff, quote unquote, right?
I tried to.
And you're confident in your abilities and your skills. you're not arrogant. You don't walk around showboating. Oh, I'm the best. I could do this. So that's the difference. Number one, people detect that. Like Zendaya's father,
Right.
Adam Blackstone,
Right,
other
right.
people. They're going to detect. Oh, this guy must really know his stuff, because not only does he have the qualifications on paper, but you can tell in the way he carries himself.
Right.
Okay, so that's the difference between confidence and arrogance.
I guess I've
Right?
never thought about it in that
Yes.
way, but I guess, yeah.
And it's the same thing that I was piqued by. It piqued my interest. I was like, oh, so my point is, number one, he has that working for him. Number two, speak of you like you're not sitting.
Hi, this is keyboardist and music director Erskine Hawkins, and I've toured with Zendaya, Rihanna, Eminem, Babyface, and Brian McKnight, and you're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with my brother, Nomad.
Subscribe to The Career Musician on Apple Podcasts.
Being a career musician is more than just gigs and sessions. Are you a career musician? Find out on the Career Musician Podcast, streaming everywhere.
Subscribe to the brand new Career Musician YouTube channel, now streaming all of the Career Musician podcast episodes.
Number two, I keep coming back to the business acumen, which we're going to tackle next.
Yeah.
When the father of Zendaya said to you, okay, what is it going to cost? You didn't squirm.
Right.
So because you have this confidence in yourself and in your abilities, you didn't go like, oh, I don't know, Mr. So-and-so.
Right,
Whatever you think you want to pay me.
Yeah, you
I'm
can't
just
do
happy to
that.
have a gig.
Yeah, you
okay.
can't do that.
Let's talk about that, because so oftentimes musicians, when it comes to negotiating a rate, that's when they lose it.
Yeah.
Now, you could be too arrogant and blow it because you think you are God's gift to your instrument, and then you just blow it that way. Or you could be too humble and you have this self-deprecation complex where you think, oh, I'm just not good enough. I'm just happy to have a gig.
Yeah,
So those are the far
that'll blow it.
extremes.
Yeah,
exactly.
that'll blow it for
so
you.
talk about, and without divulging the number,
Right.
you don't have to divulge the number, but talk about that conversation and how you handled that.
Man, well, I think the first thing I did when he brought it up was I was honest. That's the very first thing. And I learned this from another mentor. Well, from Adam Blackstone. And I know you had him on the show before.
That's right. He's
But
fantastic.
man, he is super knowledgeable when it comes to
That's right.
just this whole area. He said, man, no matter what you do, always be upfront. Because I asked him, how can you work with all these artists at one time and
That's right.
and nobody be upset that you're not here and whatever, He's like, man, I've always got to be honest with them and tell them this is what my schedule is. I'm not available for these dates, yada, yada, yada. So when he asked me, I was like, well, just so you know, I won't be available. I'm not available at this time. So he said, that's fine. We can work around that. What's your number? Then I said, if you overshoot it, then they could be like, well, you're too expensive, and just let. But if you undershoot it, yeah, sure, yeah, absolutely, I'll take. And
then
that's
they could take it for granted.
Yeah, they'll take it for granted. I mean, they'll scoop you up so quick. It's like, oh, that was easy.
Yeah.
If somebody ever was like, oh yeah, absolutely, then you probably undershot it. And, just so you know. So I started with a number that's comfortable for me.
Okay.
That makes sense to me.
This is a weekly rate?
A weekly rate.
Okay.
I started with a weekly rate that made sense to me, and I said, this is what I normally make for a week. This is my normal weekly rate. I get my own hotel room, yada, yada, yada. But, and just in case it spooked him, it scared, because at that time, the weekly rate that I quoted, it was a little, it was pricey.
A little on the high end, yeah.
But that was on purpose, though, because I wasn't sure what it was paying. So I overshot it, and I followed the overshot with, but if that's over budget, I'm definitely
Let me
flexible.
know.
I'm flexible to a negotiate.
Things are negotiable.
Yeah.
Did you hear that, everybody?
Yeah.
He overshot on purpose.
On purpose.
Because he wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
You're leaving yourself a gap, a cushion.
But let's negotiate. If you want
Yes.
to talk me down. If
Yeah.
not, then you're going to accept it. And I'm super happy because
Right.
I didn't think I was going to get that in the first place.
Right.
I didn't get that. He talked me down. But what was cool is, so I started the gig with Zendaya. I was with her for a while. And the next year, there were some changes in the band. I wound up being her music director. And they let me bring in, my guys or whatever. I wound up getting what I quoted the first time.
There you go.
Oh, yeah,
And you
yeah.
brought in your team.
I brought in my team. So I did eventually get there, but when they brought me in as a keyboard player, I didn't get that.
Right.
Yeah, when I switched over, I did get there and more. So it was a cool gig. So at that time, now I'm working with Zendaya. I was working with Eminem. I was still working with Chrisette Michele, and then the next year, Eminem and Rihanna announced that they were going to do a tour together. Since Adam Blackstone was the music director for both, instead of having two bands out, he was just like, why don't we just use one band and the same band? It was a much bigger band.
Yeah.
But he said, why don't we use one band? So I wound up being in the band with Eminem. Of course, I was doing that gig, and now with Rihanna, which was cool, man. So for that year, they toured together. So it was Eminem and Rihanna, and that was a good tour. And then I would finish the show. It was called the Monster Tour. So I would finish that, a show with Eminem and Rihanna. Then I would fly into a show with Zendaya, and then I would fly from there and go do a show with Chrisette Michele.
Talking about a career musician,
man. It was really cool.
That's the epitome of a career musician.
But then the next year, Eminem didn't do any shows. Okay. So this is where saving your money.
Great segue. Let's talk about that.
He didn't do any
So he
shows.
does 0 shows. So now all of a sudden your workload starts to die down.
It dies down.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that, Erskine?
Man, well, one of the most important things I learned from childhood was to always have a savings, always save. And we don't ever know as career musicians, and we don't always know where the next paycheck is going to come. Playing in church does help sometimes. But now where I am,
steady gig anywhere.
It's a steady gig anywhere helps. But now where I am in life, I actually don't play in church anymore because I've learned how to balance my money. Also, being married helps.
It's so important. So we covered negotiating. We covered, juggling schedule, and the primary is honesty. For both of those.
Gotta be.
Now let's talk about managing money, and this perhaps is one of the most difficult for us. There's times when we can make 5 figures in 1 month.
Absolutely.
And look at our spouses or our significant others and get all happy and be like, wow, look what we made. And then for the next 6 months,
nothing.
You're lucky if you make $1,000 each month.
Absolutely. Okay, so it's not just me.
Oh, no, okay. I've been there before, trust me.
It's not just me.
And although, I am 47, there's times where it still happens. It just happens. It's just part of the nature of the business.
Ebbs and flows.
Ebbs and flows. And you can ask anybody. I've asked some of the greatest composers in LA, and they say, hey man, work comes in seasons. Just know that. If you well prepare, Jermaine Franco, wonderful composer who did Coco. A movie, Coco.
Yeah.
A friend of mine.
I haven't seen that yet. My wife, she said, honey,
it's a great
cried.
movie. Yes.
I haven't seen it.
I remember talking to her, maybe a year or so ago. I was asking her about a session, and she's like, yeah, you know how it is, work, there's seasons, right now I'm in a down season, I'm not really doing anything.
Off the movie, wow.
Yeah, so look, it doesn't matter how big you are, what scale, does Adam Blackstone have seasons? Probably. Are they as long-lived? Probably not, where he goes through a dry season, where people like Ricky Minor, but does it happen? Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe you get to a point and it stops happening. That's amazing. But for those of us who it doesn't, how do we deal with it? Now, one of the things that really, again, piqued my interest with you is I can see that not only are you tenacious, you go after it, you're proactive, you're well mindful of all areas of your life, but then you go and you study, you're a student. And I love that. I've always been that same way. And meek, right? There's something about meekness that you always want to learn. And
the Bible says they'll inherit the earth.
There you go. Yeah. So then you're studying the stock market.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so what I like about Erskine is, who says, oh yeah, that's my hobby, studying the stock? First of all, who says that? Second of all, who says I'm going to go spend thousands of dollars to take a course from a private instructor on how to invest in the stock market?
Coach, yeah.
Well, Erskine does. And, all these things, and I love it. So talk about it, man, because, like you said, being married helps, having children, money management. But you were managing your money well even before you had the family.
Yeah. Well, man, I realized that you have to have money. My mom said, don't ever let someone put you in a corner without money. Because if you're in a corner without money, then you have to take every gig that's offered to you. So you got to have money to turn down things. You have to have enough saved. And I see a lot of people, man, when they start, people that have never had money, sometimes when they get a huge influx of money, I mean, you being a career musician, especially because you do movie for TV and film, man, some of those checks, which I haven't really done any of those, but some of those checks that these guys get from doing that stuff, I mean, you get, you can get a 5-figure check at one time.
Right.
And there are some people who have never had money that don't know what to do with that kind of, I mean, they'll have every new pair of shoes, they'll have every video game.
No, that's
they'll
silly.
Have,
you can't.
It's so what I've
unless you know for a fact that those 5 and 6 figure checks are going to consistently come every quarter or every month.
Even if that's the case, I would wait until I have 3 of those 5-figure checks before I started spending any of it. Because that way it proves that they're going to come, not just, someone tells me they're going to come, so on the first one I go and blow it on because I got more coming. Let the first couple of them show up first and then go and start spending. But man, so yeah, I started my money management in college because my parents, they loved me so much that when they kicked me out of the house at 18 and I left, and I went to college for the first time, they also, I was cut off completely. My own phone bill, the whole nine. I paid for all of my college myself. That's how much they loved me. They kicked me out. They never looked back. So,
see, that's amazing that you said that because so many people would misconstrue that.
I was being sarcastic.
Okay, but you were. I know. I could detect the sarcasm.
But I'm not. Yeah,
but
that was love.
You still did not misconstrue it. You still know at the core of your heart that they did love you because they taught you the most valuable lesson at 18.
Yeah, got to manage money. Got to manage. If you're an adult now, you got to manage your money. So I realized, like my freshman year in college, the first couple of months that I was out on my own, because I was now out on my own, living on the dorm and whatever, man, if I had all my money in one place, like if I had my savings and my checkings in the same bank, man, I would pull money out of my savings and transfer it to my checkings. I would do it every single time. I want something. I want this. Yeah. So I was like, how can I not do that? Especially infomercials, man. If I saw an infomercial or something,
you were on the hook.
I was on the hook.
You sound like me. That's why I'm excited. I'm the same way.
This knife cuts. You can cut through metal with this knife. I was ordering stuff for no reason, just because I had the money to
Look at this rubber band set. Exactly. Wait, what? You bought a rubber? Yeah, but because you don't understand. They're so versatile.
These pots and pans right here, you can, they won't burn your food. You don't have to spray any cooking. I was like, I had so much junk because I had the money to afford it. It was the craziest thing. But I was like, how can I stop myself? Because I had to be my own voice of reason.
Right.
So what I realized is, if I had my money in the same bank, my savings account, my checkings account in the same bank, I would transfer the money over. Right. So I set up I opened a different bank. I was with Bank of America. I opened a Chase Bank account, put my savings account in Chase Bank. And as soon as, here's a card to access your money, sir. I took some scissors and I cut it up. I cannot transfer money from one account to the other unless I physically go into my savings account and take the money as cash and put it into my my checking account. I cannot access that.
But you can write yourself a check from the checkings account into the savings to save.
Yeah. I can do that. Right. And I could also, I forgot how I had it. And that's everything I was making at that time. I didn't have direct deposit. So everything I was making was checks. So I would take that and I would deposit that and I would take a little bit of that and put it in my checkings account. Yeah. That's how I did, man. Next thing I know, I think by the time I graduated college, I think I had $13,000 or $14,000 I saved.
Amazing.
Yeah, because I wasn't touching, I knew how to separate the two.
Oh, I'm sorry, with that $13,000 you went out and bought 3 new keyboards, right?
Man, yeah, right. Man, I didn't buy anything with that money.
Sorry, say that again.
I didn't buy anything with that money. And that's why when I decided to move to New York after college, I was like, I'm good. I've got the money to move. I can actually do things. If you don't have money, you can't do anything. That was your seed. Which is how I'm able to now play gigs even if they don't pay. The first thing out of my mouth is how much. The first thing out of my mouth isn't how much does it pay. Right. How much does it pay? Like that's
the
not
first important. Train of thought is, do I want to do this gig because I enjoy working with this group,
or because it's going to be good for my career?
Good exposure for something
else. Great exposure.
Right.
I don't have to think about the money aspect of it because I am now funding myself from money that I've saved. So that was the biggest. Was like the biggest thing, man. So, and I had money to be able to do whatever I wanted. It was only $13,000, $14,000 at the time. Yeah. But man, so I kept that same train of thought up even once I started doing gigs. How much money do I really need to live? If I get a huge influx of cash, let's say we go out, because some artists aren't week to week. Some artists are, it's. Every show you do, you get a check for it. Yeah. So if I come home and I've got $4,000 from being out for a week or two with this artist, how much of this money do I actually need? I don't need the whole thing. Take $1,000, put your $1,000 in the checking account. Take the $3,000, put it in the savings account. And the next thing you know, man, like I had my savings account up to 6 figures. It was up to 6 figures,
Wow.
and that's when I was like, what do I do with all this money, man? That's how I got in the stock
I remember you were
market.
talking to me about
what
it.
What do I do with it?
And I was telling you, sit tight, don't get excited, because I know it is exciting. But yeah, invest a portion of it. But again, you have to be careful. And you know, people would say, okay, well, I saved $150,000. I'm going to go buy a house.
Absolutely.
Great.
Well,
good.
okay.
But don't take $150 and put it down on the house.
No,
you
absolutely
knucklehead.
not.
You got to
That's what I'm
save
saying.
some.
You still need it. You still need it.
So let's take, first of all, it depends the market you're in. If you're in LA, good luck, because 150
It's not-
is
you're not
going to
gonna
get you a
get something,
$300,000 house. You're not going to
Right.
go very far. So it's not going to really do anything. It'll cover your closing costs and maybe a very, very small percentage of a down payment.
Yeah.
But if you're in, you know, if you're within the interstates, you know, if you're in Texas and the Tennessees and the Georgias and things like that, 150 is a lot. So maybe take 75, put it on a down payment, take the other 70, maybe put 25 away in what I call an EFA, emergency fund account,
Yep.
right? And then take another 25 and maybe do the stocks, and then maybe the other 25 and put it in an IRA.
There you
right?
go.
So now you just diversified your whole portfolio.
It's not all in the same
Yeah.
place. It's
Yeah.
still safe. You know, man, that's the best way to do it. So after all this, in 2015, now Eminem is no longer. He took like the whole year off. So luckily though for me, Adam Blackstone calls again.
There you go.
And Rihanna is now heading out and doing shows. So he's
There you
like,
go.
hey man, I mean, you already know all our stuff. Would you want to
just
come and
makes
do?
sense.
So yeah. So then I was with Rihanna at that time.
Was
it
Nuno
cool.
Betancourt with her at the
Yes,
time? I love Nuno.
Yeah, Nuno was there.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was
yeah.
it was a great experience getting to rock with Nuno and the band. So that's how I wound up with Rihanna. And I think by this time I had moved to Los Angeles, and I realized, man, I moved out here. My apartment was paying like $1,600 a month for an apartment. I wanted a nice
is cheap.
apartment. It's
Still
cheap.
cheap
but
for
it's
nice,
expensive to me because I'm from Dallas. So
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's twice as much as any apartment in
And I was
Dallas.
paying twice as much as
That's
that. So,
freaking ridiculous. It's
well, I have a nice house in Burbank, but still.
Right.
It's,
With an attached house to
it's
it,
all
man.
where you are, yeah.
But I realized, I was like, I'm paying a lot of money to live by myself, but I'm also a touring musician.
Right.
So when I'm gone for 4 weeks at a time, I've now just paid a whole month's rent for my
no reason.
stuff to sit there.
To
So I would,
collect
man, I would definitely encourage people, if this is what you do, man, you want to be a touring musician, you don't necessarily, some people are really proud and really want to live on their own. I get it.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to live by yourself.
That's right.
If it makes sense to have a roommate, man, cut those costs in half, especially if you're not going to be home. If you're not home, like, don't waste money. Which is why for me, man, that's why I was like, it's time for me to get married, because it's costing me way too much money. When I bought my house, I was like, it was the same thing. Now I'm paying mortgage on a house, and I get it, that's an investment.
Sure.
But I'm just like, man, I wouldn't mind paying for this house if I was out on the road for a couple of weeks and there's somebody living there, but there's nobody living there. And so, yeah, as far as money management, that's why I was like, it's time for me to get married. My wife is a teacher. That's exactly what I wanted, somebody that didn't have anything to do with music. That's personally well, because I dated all kinds of singers and everything. I was like, I just can't do this anymore. So So
I think all these decisions, again, you're good at making decisions and sticking with
it had to make sense, man.
And that's what you have to do.
She has a great job, and that's because, like, it has to be a compliment. Not saying I picked my wife because, it made sense, but I am saying it made sense, though.
Yes.
Like, it wasn't just I love her. It wasn't just that, because it also needed to make sense. And that's because I'm an adult, and I'm a career musician, and I know this. It has to make sense for my life. So if she's an artist and I'm an artist and I hit a spot where I'm not making a lot of money, I mean, my wife is a teacher, and she's, even though it's not like, you know what I mean,
It's a good
steady.
salary. It's not
steady.
amazing. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're not going to get rich, but it's steady.
Exactly. It's steady, and we can make it work. So right now, to this day, we still live off of her salary. I mean, we use whatever money I make, and I still make great money. We use whatever money I make, and we supplement what she does. I mean, we supplement whatever's left after we spend everything from her check.
Right.
We'll take some money out of what I make, and we'll put that, we'll live off of that, basically. But when I tell you we live so far below our means, man, we just bought a house, another house, and just to make sure we're able to afford the mortgage, man, we went to the savings account, we paid off both cars, we paid off all the student loans. So absolutely, the only thing we're paying right now is this house note, which she can actually afford by herself. So anytime I go out and I travel, whether it's with Brian McKnight or with Babyface or with whoever else it may be, man, all of that money goes straight to our savings account.
That's amazing.
So that's
no
my
easy
idea.
feat.
Yeah. The only thing I do splurge on new keyboards every now and again, but only if they make sense.
Right.
Yeah, only if they make sense. She did let me buy it. I bought a grand piano, but this A, it's a tax write-off, and B, like I only buy stuff that pertain. This is me personally. I know everybody else has their toys, but my toys are music related.
Right.
And that's kind of so that's what even right now we're sitting here in this hotel. I don't know what hotel we're in, but
the Pullman Tokyo.
We just this guy Nomad just convinced me to spend $33 on breakfast. And I wanted to go to Starbucks because Starbucks is only what, $5 or $6? No, but that's cool.
For a sandwich and a coffee, it would have been probably more like 11.
Are you kidding? Yeah, probably. Yeah, but yeah, we spent 33 each. So between the two of us, we spent $66 on breakfast. But that's just the way I think. I'm like, man, you know. Last thing I will say about once some guys do get these gigs, man, like we're out here, you know, per diem is a real thing. They give you per diem. And for people that don't know, per diem is money that an artist pays you. What is it?
It stands for per day. It's Latin for per day.
Yeah, per day.
You get a per day rate to take care of your incidentals, your food.
Yeah, so your food and whatever else you might want to do. Some people see that as like their shoe money, which is fine to buy shoes with it or whatever. My goal is always to take home as much per diem as possible because that's like extra pay. So if I could, you know what I mean? Like if we're going to play, so tonight we're playing at Billboard and they're going to feed us dinner. They might have lunch there for us too. Since we'll be there so early.
We're doing sound check. They'll have lunch and dinner.
So if we do lunch and dinner there, I'm not going to then after the show tonight, which is done early, like 8:30, I'm not going out to dinner afterwards because they're going to have dinner there for us at the venue. I'm going to eat dinner at the venue and then I'm going to save all of my per diem for the day. But that's how I think. I think of ways that I can take the most amount of per diem home.
But it's true. I have a story. But really, there's so many different ways you can look at this. And my way, and I love your way, and my wife more subscribes to that, and she's usually on me, honey, watch it. Don't spend, you know.
This guy here, don't let Nomad tell you different.
I love to spend, you know, I'm like, well, hey, you know, I feel like per diem is there to be spent.
Yeah.
And I have friends of mine, like yourself, who have actually opened savings accounts just based on per diem. A good friend of mine, cool. John Santos, did that. He said, yeah, man, he said, I have per diem from 1999 that's in the bank right now. I'm like, holy cow, look at how you made that money work for you.
Now that's interesting. I've never thought about that before.
Number one.
Good. Yeah.
Number two, and you know, Warren Buffett would be proud of that, right?
Yeah,
you know,
that adds up quick.
It does. The opposite is, you know, hey, I'm going to enjoy it a little bit because while I'm out here, I get to do that. I'm out here that, you know, look, no way is either right or wrong. I think perhaps a balance is good. And I think knowing those opportunities, if they're going to provide food, great, I can save some per diem today. So I'm all about that.
I was literally just about to say, I think the term for it is have a plan for your money, and that's really it.
Another thing, like my wife says, you know, if I'm going to a really cool country, she'll be like, I want you to buy a musical instrument from that country, an cool. Indigenous, you know, something you can only get there. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that makes sense, you know. So there's so many different ways of looking at it, and I think it's brilliant. I was going to say something else. Great story. You reminded me. Stephen Bruner, the artist now known as Thundercat.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Stephen Bruner, Ronald Bruner's brother. I was out on tour with him, with Eric Benet, back in 2006, I believe.
He played all the gigs.
Yeah. Nice. So we were in D.C. It was snowing. It was a rough night, man. We finished the gig, and we went out, had some drinks, and had some fun, and Steven just bought the brand new iPhone. The first iPhone just came out.
What year? 2006? Yeah.
He's going to love and hate me for telling this story. He lost his iPhone. It just came out. So I was still on the Palm Pilot.
Yeah.
Just came out, and I went out with him at like 1 a.m. I said, Steven, we're going to find your phone. So we backtracked all of our...
pre-find my iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We backtracked that night. We were probably out for a couple hours in like a blizzard. It was just awful. And we never did find his phone. But we came back to them. But the reason why I bring it up is because I always thought Steven was a little loose with his money. And you mentioned this because he loved, what is it, Baps, the sneakers? Babes, Baps, I don't remember. So he would take his per diem money and buy the hottest sneakers. The moral of the story is, when I thought Steven was being unreasonable and spending his money irresponsibly, he thought, hey, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. And he didn't see anything wrong with it. I say all that to say now, look at where he is. He's his own artist, probably making a hell of a lot more money than I am, doing what he loves to do. So my point, again, is the point I'm driving home here, without pointing fingers, sorry for all the puns here, there is no right or wrong way.
Right.
You just never know. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are led by sheer passion, and sometimes people are led by, extreme regimented planning.
Yeah, that's me, man.
Pre-planned. I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah.
But I have learned over time to try to find the balance, because you know what happens when you're busy making plans. Mm-hmm. God has a way of changing them, right? So you never know. But then the flip side of that is, fail to plan to fail. So again, there's an extreme right and extreme left. It's always that balance.
Man,
I mean, don't you think?
Absolutely, absolutely, man.
So sorry for the long-winded.
No, you're
story.
good.
Yeah.
But really quick, I don't know how long we're at here, but I definitely want to. So for everybody listening, I just wanted to throw a few things out there that kind of help me get to. Because I know you guys don't feel like listening to us talk for like 3 hours. So
you'd be surprised. Maybe somebody
really? Okay,
does.
what's somebody? Nobody wants to hear me talk.
Some 16-year-old kid in their bedroom practicing.
Well, man,
I'm
I'm honored. But so basically, though, just to sum up, I guess my story of things that worked for me, because I was saying earlier in the podcast that I'm not the best musician, and I know that. So I
would beg to differ, but
man, I appreciate that, because I try not to let it show. But the way that I do that is by not necessarily over preparing, but there are some things that I can do.
That's right.
To be prepared more than some people. Like as a keyboard player, our sound is extremely important. Not everything is piano and strings. Like sometimes, I know when I started this gig, I had never played Chair 2 before. I had never played auxiliaries before, but I figured that, if I'm going to be here, the best thing I can do is match these sounds as close as I can.
That's right.
To Babyface's records.
That's right. And that's what he wants.
And that's what he wants. So that's what I did.
The gig calls for.
So as a keyboard player, not many keyboard players do it. Whatever rig I have on stage, I have the exact same rig at home. So I practice exactly. So I've got 4 keyboards on this Babyface gig. I've got 2, the Montage 8, the Montage 7, the Roland Phantom G7, and a Nord Electro 5. I've got those exact same keyboards at my house set up right now. So
and you save everything to
I save everything to a thumb drive, and then I bring it here, and then I load it in. So I'm not wasting time setting sounds. Right. I don't waste time with that, and that also gives me time to tweak these sounds. Because at rehearsal, like Nomad likes to move. He's a music director that he's hey guys, let's go.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily have time to set sounds then. So the sounds that I create, I make them at home. Now if we're doing stuff on the fly like we did at rehearsal the other day, that's why I'm like, hey, Nomad, give me a second.
Yeah. And let me talk about that. And the reason why I like to move is because oftentimes what happens is you can do a sound check, which turns into a mini rehearsal, and that's normal. Let's face it, most bands and acts do that. You turn them into a little mini rehearsal to fluff up arrangements here and there. What happens is, first of all, you get a certain amount of time for sound check, depending on who else is on the bill, because those other artists have to sound check before or after you, number one. Number two, I don't like to burn everybody out at sound check, because then you have no creative energy left for the show. Number three, in this case with Babyface, the artist he's always there. He likes to be there.
I saw it on the list, on the schedule today. I mean, I looked at that last night when she sent the schedule out. The vans pick us up. He's in a different hotel than us. The vans pick us up at noon today. They're picking him up at noon. He will probably be at the venue before we get there.
He usually is.
That's how he does.
So oftentimes, I don't like to make the artist wait.
Yeah.
And here's my theory, my take on it. As the musician, the career musician, each individual chair is responsible for taking care of all of their needs prior to sound check, prior to the show. Oh, well, how can you do that? Well, there's times, because let's talk about this. Each musician on that stage has their own tech. So, or you might share a tech, but you still have a tech. So you get together with your tech, on your time. You say, hey man, these are my sounds, please load them in, blah, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, tomorrow I have to tweak this, this, and this. So you plan. So that way when you get to sound check, you don't have to say, oh, excuse me, MD, we need to stop everything
So I can work.
so I can do my sound programming.
Yeah.
I guarantee you Adam Blackstone doesn't work like that. Guarantee you Ricky Minor doesn't work like that.
moving, yeah.
Guarantee you David Foster doesn't work. You have to move. So again, there's that balance, that fine line.
Yep.
But
So-
I like guys like you who actually take the initiative to get it done.
Gotta get it done. So I get it done at home. So this is one of the things that I do. Like, and it is just anything that you can do to set yourself apart from what everybody else does. So that's one thing that I do. I mean, I try to have killer sounds. I'm not Monty Newble. I don't know if you've ever worked with Monty Newble.
I haven't,
before.
but I know.
I mean, he's got like the best sounds in the world. So I mean, I try to be Monty Newble when I'm playing auxiliaries. Like, what can I do to add? So that's one thing I do. Another thing I do, I played my first gig with Brian McKnight earlier this year. That's a new gig that I'm doing.
We almost did that together because
Really?
Tarek called me for that.
Really?
Yeah, that would have been fun.
Man, that would have been great. Yeah, man, I guess
I wasn't available. Yeah.
Oh, that sucks, man. Yeah, you would actually be killing on that gig. So, but I mean, when I listened to that music, man, it was super tough, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to memorize this entire show."
Right.
So I put the stuff on my phone. I listen to it over and over and over and over. That's before I sit down to ever play it. I listen to the show probably 5 or 6 times.
Smart.
Try to figure out what it is that I'm going to play, like what my parts are and whatever. And then for that gig specifically, I sat down and wrote out charts. Not like just little note, like actual charts, because I'm like, I'm not going to memorize this.
Sure.
And this is one of those gigs, man, like, you know, you don't always get to rehearse with the artist beforehand.
That's right.
And that is not an excuse
To not
to
be
come
prepared.
in and suck, man. You don't get to suck either, because it's even though it's my first gig with him, it's still an audition. If it doesn't go well, you won't be back.
Well, we call that a live audition.
Is that what it is?
basically,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Well, that's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
refer to it as. You're auditioning on a gig.
On a gig, yeah. If it doesn't
and
go
you will
well,
never get called back if you screw it up.
and they'll talk about you. So
They'll talk mad trash about you, and rightfully so, because if you call yourself a career musician, then damn it, you better prove it.
that means being able to do a gig without rehearsing with the rest of the band.
That's
so
right.
that's really where your ears come in handy. Like, they'll send you an MP3, and for some reason, I mean, you're not going to get charts. They won't send you charts. They're going to send you a show. Nomad sent us a show. The show is 90 minutes. Learn the show. That's what it is.
That's right.
That's how these gigs work. They send you the MP3 of the show.
Well, because
you
most
gotta chop
pop
it up
gigs-
yourself and the whole that. But that's, and I will say that's something I do. I use this
smart.
program called Transcribe. I go through the entire show. This is before I start practicing any of it. Chop the show up either in Pro Tools or Logic or GarageBand, whatever you have. Each song, chop it individually so I can easily just click on it. You know, when I put it on my phone, whip appeal. I can just go straight to that song as opposed to skimming through a 90-minute show trying to find it or whatever the case is. So now I've got songs, you know, on my playlist 1 through 23 or however many songs it is, so I can just click it and then I can take it song by song, but I'm listening to it in order. I've got the transitions down. That's how I learn these shows, but that's
the effective way to
it's
practice.
effective.
You said
One song
earlier,
at a time.
you said, I know how to practice.
Yeah.
And the only way to practice is in baby steps, literally.
Yeah, you try to take that whole show if you want to, you'll never get through it.
Well, let's take your classical studies. How many Chopin etudes did you have to learn? How did you tackle a Chopin etude?
I'm glad you brought this up. I know how to practice now. I learned how to practice by practicing classical music. I
that's
didn't
how you
learn this
learn.
until like my 3rd year of classical studies when I learned how to practice. When I finally got out of it. 'cause I
One
learned how to
measure at
practice.
a time.
Absolutely.
One
And
phrase at a time.
Not like one measure and then go to the next measure and then go to no. Literally one measure for 30 minutes or however long it takes you. Master each bar,
phrase, each bar.
You'll get it. You'll
And
get it.
especially for piano, set one hand at a
Oh
time.
yeah, it's one. So there's one hand for the first measure. Then you play the second hand for the first measure. Then you play the 2 hands together for the first measure, and play it again for the first measure.
But
and
again,
for
that
the
might
first-
take 30 minutes depending on how
for one
difficult
bar.
the passage is.
But you'll get it. And if it's like, I mean, depending on what it is, you might have to do 2 bars at one time.
Right.
If it just like
To complete
if
the phrase.
if it flows together
Musically,
like that.
correct.
But absolutely 1 bar at a time. And I use a program called Transcribe, and I put everything in Transcribe. Transcribe basically, there's some apps on your phone that do it. I like to do it on my computer, so it's separate than my phone. But because when everything is on your phone, you get a text message. Now all of a sudden I'm checking my text messages, or let me get on Facebook really quick.
Well, let's talk about that. When you're practicing,
put it down.
Your phone should be gone. It shouldn't even be in sight.
I tell my wife, I'm like, I mean, she knows the drill now, but when she calls, my wife just, hey babe, how are you? She likes to just call, honey. I can't practice if I'm texting.
If I'm fielding texts and communication.
I'm so sorry. So she knows it by the tone of my voice now. Yes. Is there a problem? Is there an emergency? What's going on? Like, so she knows.
Erskine Jr. just burped.
Okay,
great, babe.
All right. I will call you when I'm done. Like, practice is really, that's my work hours. Like, I work 9 to 5. So I use Transcribe, and I put everything in there. It lets you slow your music down. I go passage by passage. If there's something I can't hear, I mean, call your music director if you need to.
Right.
Like, I couldn't hear it. That's not an excuse. You have my phone number. Like, what is that line?
And don't just
what are
text,
the chords?
or don't just DM me.
Shoot me an email.
Let's not talk about. Don't even get me started on. Oh yeah, I DM'd you.
No.
What? You think I have time to check 6 different social media DMs?
Shoot me an email. Shoot me a text, and call
and
if
then
you have a
call,
question.
follow up.
You have no excuse not to know a show when you show up.
Right.
So so first sounds, second being over prepared if I need to write charts or whatever the case may be, because I can't memorize all. At this point now, I play with a bunch of artists. Yes. I was listening this morning because as soon as we get back, we go to Cancun. As soon as we land, and then after Cancun, I'm off with another artist for about a week. And then as soon as I get home, I'm MDing this. It's like an award show thing. I'm MDing that, and then as soon as I get done with that, then I'm out with that rock band. And so it's a lot of music. I chart everything for the most part because it's just too much. So those are 2 things that I do.
Hold your friends accountable. Why didn't you call me for that award show?
No,
You said you were going to call me.
We're doing. It's in January.
I got to get them. I got to bust them.
I was thinking about that.
I thought you were calling me for one in November.
Not this one in November. They moved it. I told you that. So you're doing that.
I'm not available?
You are available. You're available because I'm available.
I'm doing it with you?
Yes, in January.
See, News, you got to hold your friends accountable, folks.
No, this one is one that is somebody else. I'll tell you about it. But so that's 2 things: sounds, being over prepared, and responding to correspondence.
Please elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because me and Nomad are the same in this respect. That's we're kindred spirits when it comes to response times and responding to things.
Yes.
Like, if I'm the music director for something and I send you an email, and I'm like, hey everyone, rehearsal today is going to be a such and such. Today we're going to run over such and such. Don't just look at it and be like, just see that you saw it. And
don't just confirm it in your mind.
Right, exactly. Shoot me an email back, not to everybody, but just reply just to the person that sent it, and say, I got it. Because when you send it, when you say, received, that's what I say. When you say send all, then that, then everyone's getting too many emails. But to send it to the person that sent it to you back. So that's one thing I do. Like,
there's
and I've got
3 words: received, confirmed, or copy.
Yeah.
All of those are
the same
excellent
thing.
Responses,
and they show that you're a professional. So that's like one thing that I really, when it comes to communication, if there's a new artist I'm working with or an artist period, I put their email address is now saved. I put them as my favorites. Yeah. So when I get an email or a text, when it flashes on my phone, my watch alerts me that they hit me. I hit them back. They normally get an email back from me within 2 minutes.
That's right.
And that's every single time. So there's never a time where unless I'm like sleep or something.
Or on an airplane without Wi-Fi.
On an airplane, and even if so, as soon as I see it, I hit them right back. Communicate, like you can always reach me, and I'm not going ghost on you for 3 days at a time, or I sent so-and-so an email, we haven't heard back from them yet. That's the best way for me, when I'm a music director, that's the best way for me to replace you with somebody else. Communication. I need to be able to communicate with you because it frustrates me when I can't communicate.
And unapologetically.
Oh, yeah.
I have no problem saying, you know what? Well, why didn't you call me? Oh, because your response time is just, I can't really count on you.
It irks me. It irks me. And I can't depend on you. I can't depend on you. You're telling me that you're undependable, and that scares me. A step
further, if we're at rehearsal or sound check and I just taught you a new phrase.
Oh, yeah.
I expect you to either do one or 2 things.
Record it.
Record the phrase audio or record it video.
Sometimes video is important, so you can
see the fingering of the phrases of the move. Sometimes Babyface comes up on the keyboard stand and teaches you a part that he wrote in 1988.
And he knows it.
He knows it. You think you're going to remember it that
It's
night?
very specific.
You better record that part. What did I do at rehearsals? I would take my phone and go
Record it
and video
and then
record.
put 'em in the Dropbox.
I put them in the Dropbox so the keyboard players can see the artist himself playing those parts, which are very convoluted in the mix. It's hard to decipher.
Yeah, no, he's playing it for you.
But-
Also, we don't get to embellish. I mean, we can on this gig, but I'm saying as keyboard players, it's not our job to embellish, especially a gig like this where it's super iconic.
That's right.
Clifton has a lot more and Clifton is keyboard chair one in
Mostly.
this gig. I kind of back down and give him more freedom on this gig because our band has grown since I've been here. Like we've got a big band now, so somebody's got to relax. I think I kind of chill. Nomad, I know exactly.
I did the same thing.
I know where your parts are.
Yep.
Like me and Nomad play the same parts, and Reggie's the drummer. He plays the same parts every single night.
That's right.
I think actually just about everybody on this gig.
does. Walter's the bass. He does
Every
the same
single
thing.
night, I know exactly where each lick is going to be.
This is a parts gig.
It's a parts gig.
It's not an interpretive gig. If you're doing a jazz gig, it's more interpretive.
Yeah, you kind of play what you feel. Not here.
A pop gig, you have to really adhere to the.
There's too many people on stage now for us to be walking all over
just
each
winging
other.
it. Yeah. Well, look, Erskine, you've covered so many important aspects of the business. Thank you, first of all.
And it's been my pleasure.
Yeah, and I could talk for hours. We could talk for hours, but these things are really important. And any last words of wisdom or insight or fun memories that you might want to share?
Man, I think as far as words of wisdom, I mean seriously, just trust that what's supposed to be for you is going to be for you. And sometimes, man, I'm not saying to, if things aren't working where you are, like give up, but definitely think strategically about like what it is that you're trying to do. There's a million other people, maybe not a million, but 500,000 other people trying to do what you're trying to do. If we're talking about being musicians, and we're talking about being career musicians that travel and whatever else, there's a lot of people trying to do that.
Right.
What can you do that sets you apart, that makes you different than everybody else?
That's brilliant.
And for me, that thing wound up being education. Not very many people out here traveling have music degrees. So that's kind of my difference. And then also, because I have a degree in jazz with emphasis in classical piano, but I played in one of the biggest black churches in the world, and then I travel with hip-hop artists and pop artists and whatever. Like, I don't have to... I'm not stuck to one genre of music. So when it comes to gigs, I mean, if I have to, I've done gigs with David Foster, where it's all charts.
It's all charts.
And then,
well, like you said, Blackstone hires you to do string arrangements or charts,
or string arrangements or charts, or to actually play piano on things, or to fly out and play
sessions,
gigs,
or
to fly out and actually play the gigs. So like.
And that's where the diversity really comes in handy.
I'm able to be a one-stop shop. And then also, even with one of David Foster's artists, his name is J.J. Lynn.
Right.
J.J. Lynn's music director called me. He was like, man, he had me play, I arranged like probably 5 or 6 of the songs for that tour.
There you go.
And then he called me to play the tour as well. So I played some shows on the tour, but it's a reading gig. So, just being as diverse as you can be. The versatility. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. I'm trying to think of a fun story. Man, I don't have fun anymore when I travel. I know it sounds bad. It sounds depressing.
It's actually, I'm the same way.
Yeah, we're out
focused.
No, but you've been doing ramen and everything else. I
enjoy the food.
Oh, you do. I feel bad, man. I mean, when we were in Osaka for like the past 5 days, I didn't venture more than 2 blocks away from the hotel. Not because I couldn't, not because I'm scared to go out, because I've been traveling now for 8 or 9 years. I've just done it. Like,
you've done it, and I do believe this. You're busy. Like when I'm in my room,
I'm working.
A lot of people are just sitting there watching the tube when they're in the room. Not me. Like guys, like people like us, we're always working. If I'm not working on a chart, I'm working on a session. I'm working on something.
I never leave the house without some sort of a keyboard. Whether it's I've got a little 31 key keyboard. I don't know. Maybe this one is 29. Whatever it is, I've got a keyboard that comes with me everywhere. And when I don't bring that one, because it's big enough to where I would have to check my suitcase. So when I don't bring that one, I have a small little keyboard that fits in my backpack. I mean, no matter where I'm going, if I'm going for 24 hours, I put that keyboard in my backpack. If I'm checking a bag, I put the keyboard that's bigger, I put that in my check bag. And then if it's really something like if I'm going to somewhere and we're going to rehearse, like I know we rehearse with Face every year in January for a week.
Roughly,
I always bring, this every year. I always bring a 61 key keyboard that sits in the hotel room. Because I need to work on music. If you're like, hey, y'all, we're going to add such and such song.
You did cellos for me the other day.
I did.
Water Runs Dry.
I did. You were like, hey, can you do such and such? I got my keyboardist with me all the time, or I need to practice, or somebody else hits me up. So always being ready to work, like being out isn't an excuse. But man, I've just been doing this for so long, man. I was in Europe earlier this year, man. I didn't go anywhere. I did go to the Eiffel Tower. I like doing that.
But I will say it's not as fun without your spouse oftentimes.
Right.
It's more fun when you have your spouse.
That's what it is.
Sometimes we bring our spouses and then we go out and do that stuff.
Then I'll go out and do that stuff. But for me, it's just not worth it to me spending the money.
Right.
I still have an iPhone SE. And for people that don't know what the iPhone SE is.
I already got on them about this, folks.
That's what I use. The iPhone SE was the old iPhone 5s that they refurbished.
I got that from my 12-year-old daughter.
The iPhone SE?
For her birthday.
And that's what I use because the bigger phones make my hands hurt. That's not being a wimp about it. That's just telling you the truth. So for my wife, I just bought her the iPhone X because I don't believe in buying anything new. So that's why she's not getting the 11. So she got a used iPhone X.
Hey.
It'll be in by the time I get home.
Works for you.
That's what works for me.
Awesome.
Man, like it's for my wife, I'll get her the newest and greatest stuff. So when she comes out with me to travel, man, I definitely,
of course,
we'll go to Broadway Plays.
We'll
go see the sights. But when it's just me, I'm just like, man, I'm keeping
hunker down.
I'm on hunker down and just
I was
relax.
on the bullet train yesterday next to you. I was working.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. You worked he worked the entire like was it 2.5, 3 hours?
Yeah.
I think you napped for like the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But he worked the entire time. Could have been looking at the sights, looking at the mountains and all that, but man,
I think it's my 12th time in Japan. So,
I've seen it. I've seen it, man. So
but hey, speaking of which, you owe me cues for a TV show, buddy.
I do.
Where are my cues? You bragging about your rig, and I don't see any cues.
I did like 3 of them. I still got to get those to you. But yeah, man, to this guy, Nomad, he's kind of got his foot in the door in a bunch of different places, and that's the versatility thing. Like we just can't be career musicians touring because one of these days this touring thing is going to get old and you're not going to want to do it anymore, and you want enough money saved up to where you don't have to do it anymore, and B, you want to have other things up your sleeve that you can do instead of tour. So that's the versatility thing, and the younger you are when you start working on that, by the time you get ready to transition to something else, hopefully you've built it up into a big enough thing. So
that's right, man.
Yeah, man.
Words of wisdom by Erskine Hawkins.
I mean, it's a few of them. I wish I had like cool stories and stuff. When I tell you I'm a square, man.
It's okay to be a square.
I don't go out.
I feel like
the band doesn't invite me out anymore. It's cool. They know I'm not gonna go.
Hey, I stopped getting invited years ago.
Did you really?
So I don't
I saw on
take
the
it
Instagram
personally.
stories that everybody was out last night. Didn't really invite me anywhere. On the other hand, if they did invite me, I would have been asleep because I was knocked out by 7 p.m.
I did invite you. I invited you last night.
You did.
What did you say? You said, I'm going to go to this little spot.
I did.
And then I'm going to retire early. I said,
man, I was in bed by 7 a.m. You're absolutely right.
I was in bed by 9.
You invited me. But you're the only person. Everybody else, I had to find out from Instagram. They all went out last night and got in. They got in around the time that I got up at like 3 o'clock this morning or something like that. So that's when I got back. But anyways,
well, the life of a career musician.
That's the life of the career musician, man.
You epitomize it, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Download, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast platforms.
Check out the brand new Career Musician YouTube channel.
Want to learn more about a particular topic? Tag @TheCareerMusician and use #CareerMusician to let us know what you'd like to hear.
If you enjoyed today's interview, please subscribe and leave a review.
I'm just a nomad, nowhere man. Writing the songs in this one-man band. A nomad, yeah. I'm a nomad. So hush now, darling, you'll be fine. I'll be back this way.
Hey, this is Nomad, host and creator of the Career Musician Podcast, and I am thoroughly stoked to be an official member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Pantheon Podcast Network is the first of its kind as an all-music-based podcast collective. Please be sure to check us out at pantheonpodcast.com for more info.